Hey guys, I'm Jose and welcome to this new series of tutorials. This is Introduction to Maya and Introduction to Polymodeling in Maya. So we're going to learn how to set up the interface of Maya to be productive in polymodeling, and also how to move a little bit around and what are the elements of the interface that we need to actually start modeling. Right, so let's start right away. The very first thing that you will need to know if you're completely new to Maya is just how to orbit and move around in 3D space, right? So I'm just gonna, you can find these tutorials in the introduction to Maya, but I'm just gonna mention whatever I do in order for you not to get lost. So I'm using Alt left click just to orbit around, Alt middle mouse to pan, and Alt right click just to zoom in and out, right? So that's the very basics to actually move around and press. If I press space bar, I just basically switch between views and I can actually go into the top view or into any of the other views, right? So mainly we're going to be working here in perspective, and then we're going to just deal with the other views. So let's start. I know that Maya looks like a very scary software. It has so many kind of shelves and buttons everywhere, so we're going to just start by hiding some of that. And if we start here in display UI elements and we kind of collapse this little window here, we could see that we could actually turn on and off many of the stuff that is around, right? So for instance, the shelf is kind of nice. It has a lot of nice icons, but we are going to try to get rid of that and then only look at Maya in a workflow that could be very productive, right? So let's get rid of the shelf. Let's get also rid of the time slider, because right now we're not going to be looking at animation, and also the range slider. So we have a little bit more of space to actually work, and very quickly Maya starts looking at as a normal kind of 3D modeling package instead of just being a very full of features all over the place, right? So we can always go back to this and just turn some elements on. Some of the panels, like these panels that you can turn on here, like the channel box, we might not need right away. The tool settings we can actually drag also to this left side, so we have all these tools on the left side the way Maya used to be. So we have all these panels on this side, so we don't need to turn them on right now, but we know that they're there, right? Then if you just press spacebar and keep it pressed, you'll see that you have this hotbox, and this hotbox is perhaps one of the most useful features, because it basically contains everything. But again, it's one of those hotbox or panels that actually has too much information. So we're going to try to get rid of some of that. So we're going to click here in hotbox, hide all, and you see that now our hotbox is really, really basic. So that's a bit better. We're going to turn on only polygons. So you can see now I'm pressing space and we're having just the polygon tools to model. So this is what we're going to be doing. So we're going to try to avoid just to go to this panel here and start finding, well, mesh, edit mesh, and just finding the command that we're looking for. But let's have the content pretty much anywhere where we want it, right? So we're going to be using this hotbox exclusively to actually model and use Maya tools. And then also I'd like turning on these kind of show command menus, right? So these are some of the features that you can also see here that are common to any tab. So polymodeling, and we can actually create things on the fly here as well. That's quite handy. So we have the toolbox. Let's create something right away, just to start talking a little bit about what can we do. So we can go to create polygon mesh, and let's go into a plane, and we can just create this plane here. So I'm pressing W, like the key shortcuts for moving stuff. Like Q is select, W move, E rotate, and R scale, right? So I'm gonna be moving this around, and many people think that they miss or they're kind of familiar with 3D Max, and they like the fact that 3D Max has actually this ability to just move along two axes. That's something that you can find in Maya as well. It's only that it's a bit hidden. So if you like moving things in 2 axes, let's say X and Z in this case, you can press Control and select the axis that you want to suppress. So you can see that you can move something around just in these 2 axes, right? So that's quite convenient, and it's something that a few people are not aware of, so just pointing it out. Let's bring the channel box, and the channel box allows us to just control. If we click on this input, the polyplane creation node, we can determine how big that plane is, right? So we can say 10 and 10, and then we could say, well, 3 divisions in each direction, right? So right now we're looking at the wireframe mode. If we press 5, between 4 and 5 we can toggle between shaded mode and wireframe, right? So very simple, and we can start looking at our object. If we do something like rotation, and we have something like that, and we go back to movement, you see that move tool is actually in world coordinate space, right? So if we keep W pressed and we left click on the object, you can see that we can actually toggle this move tool from local or object space or object axis to world space. Sorry about that. So what I'm doing, I'm going to repeat that. I'm just pressing W, keeping W pressed and left clicking, and you'll see that I'm working either in world space or object space based on the rotation that we have applied before, right? So again, let's keep it. That's world space, and now object space. So you could see that we can work on that rotation, right? That's just a quick way of just changing that. We're gonna just go back to our world space, right? So let's dive into like some of the modeling tools. There is more commands and some of the, I mean, if we right click, we can start going into component mode, right? This is kind of the edge, vertex, and faces are the most classic components that you want to be able to work with, right? So for instance, vertices, again, I'm going to press Control and just move them into 2 directions, right? Maybe that, right? And you can always add to selection with Shift, remove selection with Control, and you see that we have an easy way of just adding vertices to a selection. That's pretty handy. I mean, you're going to be using it a lot. Then we can just go into edge mode. You see, edge mode allows us to move the edge mode. If you double click in the edge, you will get the ring or the loop around, in this case the edge. If you do this, double clicking one of these, you should get all the loop that goes through, the same in the other direction, right? So you can again start moving these guys in this way. If you pick faces, again, simple moving faces around, just very basic polymodeling techniques. The interesting thing is that there is a panel, or let's say a context-specific hotbox that appears if you just press Shift and right-click, right? So for instance, if we're in face mode, you see I'm Shift clicking and then right-clicking, and you see that we have operations that are for faces, right? Extrude face, face normals, poke face, cut faces, merge face, etc., right? And if we change back to object mode, you see that that Shift right-click, it's now different. So I'm just doing Shift right-click, and it's a context-specific hotbox, but allows us to really work for instance, split tool. Like, this is a really good hotbox because it's very specific to the to whatever content you're working with. So edges, again, it's different hotbox, extrude edge, etc. You have lots of different options here, right? So again, you can almost exclusively or completely exclusively you just work with this hotbox, and then with this context-specific hotbox that you can get out of pressing Shift and right-clicking over the component that you're working with, right? So something that you can do very quickly is just right-click and the edge and extrude this edge. I'll start kind of extruding some edges around, and you could start getting faster. Oops. But you have all the control in your model. You're not kind of referring to some of the content up here. I mean, you can turn components on in different ways, pressing different buttons and like in different places, but these tutorials is just trying to help you to set up Maya to have a kind of productive workflow around modeling. Let's look at some of the face tools as well. I'm just going to Shift right click, extrude face, and I'm going to create an extrusion of a face. So something very simple of extruding a face. Let's go back to object mode, right? So I'm shifting between modes, and you see that we're creating this geometry. I'm going to press 3 now, and you'll see that polygon modeling in Maya or Subdivision modeling allows us to see a kind of a smooth representation of this geometry, and this is based on the Cudmell-Clark algorithm. I believe, I'm not sure actually. If someone could correct that, that would be fine. And what it's happening is that this polygon geometry, it's getting subdivided in real time and showing us a preview of how would that geometry look in a smooth version, right? So ultimately what it's actually happening is that we could actually see that if we convert this smooth mesh preview into polygon, like the geometry, this is the real geometry that we are kind of visualizing or pre-visualizing through that kind of Cudmell-Clark smoothing. But we can actually not commit to that smoothing yet, just by working in this rough poly version and then pressing between 1, 2, or 3 work with pre-visualizing this smoothness, right? And this is very important because you need to create an intuition about how this smoothing and where to add more topology or more geometry in a way to just start dealing with sharp edges and things like that. So if we press 1, let's do some example, right? Let's do something like select an edge, so something like that, or just in edge mode I'm gonna Shift right click, and I'm gonna, or we can actually use our hotbox and say edit mesh and insert edge loop tool, right? This is a really popular or very kind of useful tool. So in this insert edge loop would allow you to place, just clicking on the edge, row, basically a series of edges that would start adding more geometry, right? So you would be wondering, it's like, what is it used for? And like, you know, like we don't really need that geometry there, but you see that in the smooth version of this geometry, now we actually could start getting much more detail and sharpness whenever we add this extra edge, right? Because now what is happening is that the smoothness is not happening between this edge and that edge just all the way through, like as we had before, like this, right? These two edges were being smooth like that. When you add this row here, and depending on how close to the top edge it's going to be, the smoothness is only going to happen between this point now and this one, right? So this is a way in which you start kind of dealing with sharpness. And for instance, let's try here, we could say here in the bottom, and again you'll see that we are kind of really outlining this geometry now. Same happening here, we could say there, and you see that we are kind of bringing some of the detail still dealing with smooth corners, but now much sharper edges, right? So we can go back to object mode, and you can see that our geometry has gotten quite a bit. Sometimes we have to just right. So this is a very first introduction to Maya modeling, and I think it serves the purpose to just show some of the tools that we're going to be using, like the hotbox, setting up a hotbox that it's just very specific to the tools that we're going to be using, mainly mesh and edit mesh. Again, the context specific hotbox with this shift right click. We're going to start seeing and how to basically split the geometry. This is one that's really useful, and then kind of clean the topology to maintain quads and keep on working with subdivision surfaces. Sorry, with polysubd, and then also we saw how to actually work with the specific move hotbox, right? So with this hotbox we actually have control over everything, and also we saw a little bit of the channel box. Yeah, see you guys soon.